You cannot do innovation if you're not optimistic. And we did this exercise about, why we do it. And it was that sense of community, and ability to impact the community and solve problems. And in that internal search, it came family, sports. I'm a very outdoor person. And nature, water is everywhere. And the one thing that impacts those three areas is water. That is when I connected the dots and say, this is my tribe.
I have found that the community is very sincerely collaborative because we're all trying to do something in the world of water that benefits humanity and ecosystems.
Safeguarding the future, providing water, nature, protecting, we all align on that purpose. And in reality is, and I'm going back now to the innovation side, you cannot do it alone. You need the will of people to make it happen. I asked to one of the municipalities here, the water districts here in Colorado, the person running the plan, I said, tell me your personal story. He said, well, I've been working on this plan for the last 15 years, and I do it because I'm concerned about the safety of water for my kid. And actually, I bring my kid to the water plant. So you start to see that where the values of my business team and the values of the customer, like perfect alignment. And that was the purpose.
I agree with you on that. Purpose drives collaboration.
Distilled is brought to you by K-Tune. You can find all of the episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Stay with us.
Really excited about the conversation with Daniel Benítez, Vice President at Veralto. Daniel really touched on one of the key aspects of solving water challenges, which is purpose and innovation and partnerships, which we talk about, but not the way Daniel talked about it, and how critically important that is in addressing scarcity, quality, and inequity in access. Daniel, great to see you, and excited to have a conversation that is optimistic, positive, and, as they say in the consulting world, the art of the possible. So, how's that?
I love it, Will. And first, thank you for having me. Let's start there. And over the last couple of years, we have had several conversations, about how do we see water, how do we see some of the exhibitions we go, some of the discussions we attend. And maybe I need to get on the optimistic side. I think that's you may be showing a path.
I love that. It's funny. I got invited to speak at a conference next week, and they found me because one of the guys on the board brands himself as an optimist. So, there are a bunch of people out there that have a positive view of, how to get stuff done. So, well, let's use that as the overarching theme for our conversation
That's
today. So tell me, and I know, bits and pieces, but how did you get started in the world of water? I don't want to say the water industry. I'm like not a fan of that, but like, what was your starting point and what you got? How did you get hooked on it?
Good question. And I'll tell you the story, but I think that for me, one of the things that I have realized when talking to other people is that the water sector found me. It's not that I found the water sector. And so, my accent is from Argentina. Here, people in Colorado do not talk with this accent. I brought it from Buenos Aires. I'm a chemical engineer. I did a career on automation, commercial, got involved early on strategy and innovation. I developed a passion for that. I developed a passion for helping commercial teams solve customer problems. And, new products and innovation have a lot to do there. Now, my beginnings were actually closer to the energy sector. Okay. So for many years, I was in refining, in process industries, in oil and gas, and got an opportunity to work out of Belfast on a small acquisition. And coming back with the family, in 2014, back to Houston, where I was living, there was something missing. I didn't know what at that time, but there was just a disconnect between my values and the industry that I was connecting with. So that's the time that I joined, at that time, a company called Danaher, a corporation called Danaher, specifically with Hack, an analytical company for water. And I've been seeing water from outside, been working with a lot of companies that had water in their processes, but never just water. Okay. And as I joined that company and I got again involved in innovation and so on, I got a chance to know the people that work in water. And I think, as we went through COVID, so I'm jumping, like 25 years here, but as we went through COVID, and I was asking myself, why innovation? You were saying about being optimistic. You cannot do innovation if you're not optimistic. All right. Like 9 out of 10 are going to fail. And then why is all these people working remotely and trying to solve customer problems? What's going on here? And why am I feeling attached? Why I like it? And actually we ran with our group kind of the first meeting after COVID that we were able to get our team together, our leadership team together. And we did this exercise about, why we do it. And it was that sense of community, and
Right.
ability to impact the community and solve problems, which also connected at the time with kind of an internal search, what matters to me? And in that internal search, it came family, it
Mm.
came nature, and it came sports. I'm a very outdoor person. And the one thing that impacts those three areas is water, you know,
Right.
is providing safety to the family. The sports activity clearly depend on hydration, and I cannot run outside. And nature, water is everywhere. So that's when I was hooked at that time. That is
Mm.
when I connected the dots and say, this is my tribe. The water sector is my tribe. And after that, I met you, and I say, okay, I'm not the only crazy one. So
Well,
so
thank
now
you.
it's like there's more than one, and here we are. Will that's a little bit my background there.
So I am honored that you referred to me as crazy, by the way.
Yeah,
I love that. You touched on a few things that are just really, really important that maybe we don't talk about a lot, that don't come up in, the no shortage of conferences that we go to, which is that human connection to water. And I was on a call just before this with a friend of mine who is a rower, and she leads water strategy. And to your point, it's this, you know, these are not silos. They're all tied together. Like your connection professionally to water, being a runner, the importance of hydration, um, and how that translates into, our tribe, our community. And maybe we can just talk about that issue, for whatever time we have. But I have found that the community is very collaborative, welcoming. I mean, it's certainly competitive, on the commercial side, but not combative. I don't see it as, you know, I see it as just sincerely collaborative because we're all trying to do something in the world of water that benefits humanity and ecosystems.
the other piece here is the purpose. Why
Mm.
do you do what you do? And I think that in any conference you go, I mean, we may disagree. Are they really driving change? Is this just another conversation?
Right,
Is it echo chamber? But I think what we can all agree is that the purpose, that we
right,
have of, safeguarding the future, providing water, nature, protecting, we all align on that purpose. And when you have that bigger purpose and you realize, look, that we have a constrained conversation, that we have a growth mindset. Okay.
right.
And when you start having that focus on purpose, the growth mindset, you know, is there. And now you don't have to lose for me to win. And in reality is, and I'm going back now to the innovation side, you cannot do it alone. You
Right.
need you need the will of people to make it happen. So I think the purpose element here is very different. And when I see it happen, and I mentioned before that conversation I had with my leadership team where we identify what drives us. Then
Mm.
after that conversation, we went to visit customers. And I asked to one of the municipalities here, the water districts here in Colorado, the person running the plan, I said, tell me your personal story. And the personal story of this engineer, he said, well, I've been working on this plant. May have been Westminster plant for the last 15 years, and I do it because I'm concerned about the safety of water for my kid. And actually, I bring my kid to the water plant. So you start to see that
Right.
where the values of my business team and the values of the customer, like perfect alignment, and that was the purpose. So you have, I think, in our group of in our tribe, it's a very purpose driven tribe, which make it easy to belong to.
I agree with that. Um, I, you know, it, for me, this doesn't feel like work. I,
Yeah, well, okay,
it,
because you're not driving innovation, but maybe if you're driving innovation,
well, all right, we'll get
I
to that.
get
But I- you know, I would say a lot of us, in this tribe on, the water tribe, if you will, are driven by that purpose. It feels noble. I mean, it translates into commercial transactions because you can't solve these problems unless, somebody's buying something, whether it's, consulting services or technology, whatever it may be. But your use of the word purpose is really central to collaboration and a view of how does this translate into humanity and nature and us being integral to that.
Look, I'll put it in two things. Purpose drives collaboration.
Hmm.
Okay, that's one piece. So it aligns a very diverse group of people saying, okay, we need to make it there. We know we cannot do it on ourselves, change everything. That's one piece. The other one is that as individuals, it gives us a much bigger reward than just the monetary compensation. So I think that's, when you look at teams and organizations, how you charge back your energy through what purpose, working for
Hmm.
a purpose, has a significant impact on productivity, ideas, commitment to make it happen, and so on.
I agree with you on that. Purpose drives collaboration. Talk to me a little bit about open innovation and how purpose ties into what you're seeing with respect to innovation, in general. So innovation partnerships, business models, funding and financing, and then finally tech. And I lay out all of those because myself included tends to focus on tech and not pay enough attention to the other moving parts of innovation. So you talk a little bit about open
Yeah,
innovation and what you're seeing globally.
yeah. So the first thing in my mind when as I've been working on this for a number of years, and you assess what's going on, is that different pieces have been in place for different lengths of time. But I would say that the ecosystem we have today with VC companies, private sector looking into open innovation partners actively, uh, water treatment companies reaching out and saying we need help and so on. That that attitude of the ecosystem and all the pieces coming together is something from the last 6 to 7 years. I mean, if you look to a lot of the dedicated VC funds that have been investing in new technologies in the sector, I don't know if there is any that is more than 10 years doing this.
Right.
I mean, they may have made investment in a water company, but a dedicated fund for water sectors as they are, there are not that many. So
Right.
I think that the first piece to realize is that the ecosystem is still in a building phase. Okay. And that ecosystem, when you engage with them, what I see is a drive for impact starting to be very clear
Mm.
versus just let's get together and talk. Okay. And, as I participate in accelerators and I have conversations with people through the ecosystem from different companies, some of them will be competitors, you know, there is, within the boundaries of what is confidential information, the ability to talk about lessons learned, to talk about what is working, what is not working. The flow of information is very open, which is similar to other industries. I mean, in the energy sector, joint ventures between an ExxonMobil and a Shell trying to reduce risk is a common thing. In the
Right.
water sector, 10 years ago, it was not common to be having these conversations, Will. So I think that you have that shaping, there that is starting to evolve. And now when you go on the innovation side, there are two pieces here that I think we still need to learn. One is the timeline. You
Ah,
know, we want to have things working today. Okay, it takes time. And the other piece is the ability to change for end users. Not
Mm.
the I mean, as a human being, it's not easy to change.
ah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have my great hair, so and I know that. But now when you are trying to think this as part of the ecosystem, and you have different parts of the ecosystem that would like to have changes going on right now, and getting frustrated because the end users do not change that fast. I think that we need to take the perspective 30 years from now. Okay? Or if you go 30 years back, has there been change? And there has
Right.
been a lot of change. And if you go forward, there's going to be a lot of change. So do not get frustrated in that ecosystem from your ability to drive change. Just keep working. It's a marathon race, it's not a sprint. It is getting
Uh-uh.
the next couple of miles done. Focus on the 26 miles. Do not focus on the next 100 meters. Now, that's easy said than done. Okay.
I love that you brought it back to running, by the way. Did you bring up this issue in prior conversations that we need to be thinking about water tech innovation the same way healthcare thinks about
Yeah,
innovation?
that was. I heard that it was a panel in the last Global Water Summit, and there was a conversation about speed of change and so on. And it was actually Helgi Dappel from Emerald.
Oh, yeah.
He made that comment, and it was like a light in my head. The realization for me was: do we understand the responsibility of the people running a water treatment plant? We complain that they don't make changes fast, and do we understand the responsibility? What
Right.
happens if they make a fast change and suddenly the whole city of New York doesn't have water?
Hmm.
Are we going to say, well, I mean, good that you try and fail. We celebrate, you try and life is good. Or it's going to be not the newspaper and that person, faces a lot of issues. So I think that sometimes we don't understand the responsibility that those
Right.
people making those decisions have in their hand. And how easy is to launch a new drug in the market? It doesn't happen in a year. It goes through a lot, I mean, FDA and so on. So why do we expect the water sector to be faster? Now the rewards are clearly different. You
Hmm.
know, you get a blockbuster drug. But that's a whole other angle to think through. We want to drive innovation. We want the sector to take risk. Are there the rewards there? That's more complex that I'm probably you have other friends to be able to interview for that.
Well, that was a really valuable comment in terms of really rethinking the timeline piece of this. And you spent some time in the oil and gas sector, and I did also briefly. And the timeline for development and innovation is very long, and
Mhm.
the upside is significant. Um, but yeah, we tend to wring our hands and get frustrated that things don't happen faster, and don't really acknowledge the human side of it. To your point, transformation takes time, and it's tied to culture and all the other soft stuff that doesn't have. I mean, it has a lot to do with technology, but it's not put as a priority, I would say. Um,
There
Go
is
ahead.
still there is a point there on innovation that I know we have talked in the past. Okay, that we think that technology is a solution for everything.
Oh yeah,
Okay, and I'm driving innovation in a large water corporation. So you will say, Daniel, I mean, how is that you are not on that boat? My business is not to drive technology. My business is to solve customer problems. Okay, so so sometimes those customer problems, are technology doesn't play a role. Okay, it may be an organization challenge that they have, and the technology
right,
is available outside. It's just like you need to sit down with the customer and say, okay, so you call that a problem. Why you are not solving it? A problem requires a pain point and
right,
requires a barrier to solve it. If there is no barrier, really, there is no problem. And I have seen, in a number of conversations with large utilities, the problem is not a technology problem. The problem is that they may be very early on in their improvement journey. They haven't driven continuous improvement from inside, and suddenly they realize, actually, we want to start getting better at what we do. Okay. From there to needing new technologies, there is a time. So on our innovation space, where we see all these kind of a storm of new technologies, the secret, I believe, is still to, are we focusing on solving the right problems? And is that the right problems that the end users are saying, not that we believe is their problem?
right.
We need, we are young in that conversation, Will. Still young.
So a couple of things. A former colleague and longtime friend was a co-author in a book that I recommend, The Technology Fallacy. And it
Yes.
gets to the point. Have you read that book?
Yep. I read it. I don't
It,
recall it, but I've read it.
well, it's not a pop quiz, Daniel. Don't worry. But I bring it up because it really addresses the point that you make that it's not the technology; it is the humanity piece of the puzzle and the ability to understand transformation. This was talking about digital transformation,
Mhm.
um, and how we really need to invest in in culture and leadership and all of that. I, but going back to what the customer needs, how do you think about what they think they need versus what you think they need? And for me, that touches on the innovation part where, and I know this is often used, but, I didn't know I needed a smartphone until it showed up. I would have gotten a better landline. So how do you manage that conversation with your customers? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I'm,
Here?
I, I, I was expecting that you were going to bring the Steve Jobs conversation when we talk about new.
It's like, here we go.
So let's agree on something. I'm not Steve Jobs. Okay, so that
No,
ability of creating a whole new market, okay, or a big customer needs, is innovation comes in very different flavors. Okay.
yeah,
Now, when you are looking, into what may happen in the next 10, 15 years from an innovation point of view, you can go and talk to the customer and say, what are the problems you have today? Okay. And that will be the pain they have today. Then you can explore to, okay, what are the things that do in an inefficient way? They just have a
mm,
compensating behavior that they don't know they're wasting that time, and it could be done in a more efficient way.
right.
Okay, so you have those problems, and those are usually what you focus on the near term innovation side. You can engage with the customer. He will tell you, "I have this problem," and you drill down and you see really what the problem is, or you can observe the customer. Like, look, they are going and taking samples everywhere, in manual and bringing to the lab. Why don't you use, a handheld meter to do that measurement and communicate it to the cloud. You don't need to do spreadsheets and Excel. Solutions for that exist. Maybe, he's just so used to it. He doesn't see it as a problem. Now, those are two ones, that near term, you know. Now what happened? What do we need for the next 15 years?
Hmm.
And now you start looking, for these domains, of areas that you have to innovate that are very high risk. Many of them may be emerging markets. And when I'm
Right.
saying emerging markets, I mean some new contaminants that today we haven't talked, but we think it can evolve.
Right.
And now you need to be aiming there. And now you're dealing with two very big risks. The emerging, the nature of an emerging market risk that is not here today. And how am I going to place bets there that the market will happen? And the other one is the technology to solve it. We also have all those risks. So
Mm.
now you're betting on a market to emerge and a technology that you need to develop that doesn't exist today. And that's what I was saying. Yeah, innovation is hard work at the beginning. Like it feels like work. And a purpose and everything. But that's is is how you distribute the risk there.
That makes sense. You bring up a good point about talking to your customers and talking to colleagues and, essentially collecting data points to know what they need now and what they think they might need going forward as a way to inform the bets that you might be placing going forward. Talk to me a little bit about, your focus on innovation and how you get a handle on what's needed now and what might be needed going forward. And I know you talk to a lot of customers, but sort of the bigger ecosystem, our tribe, like, what do you find valuable? And how do you connect all the dots and create a mind map, if you will?
Yeah. So look, I mean, the first piece is you go in our mind and how we work it, in my team is what are the hypotheses that you make? So you have big
Hmm.
vectors. I mean, we could pick one, emerging contaminants. Like for the last 5, 6 years, we have all been discussing PFAS. Okay. And we can look, it's going to be an interesting conversations 2, 3 years from now to look back what happened in that space. But let's just you pick a topic like that one. And and now you need to go and understand what are the problems that the customers see on that piece. You have your hypothesis, but just talking to talking inside your building will get you so far. And it has happened to us. I spend myself a lot of time talking to different customers until I started to see a disconnect between what I was reading, in the news versus what I was seeing in the water treatment plant. As I was working with a person, from one treatment
Hmm.
time to the next one, and you start seeing, okay, this person is going to have this problem. He doesn't know it yet. Okay. So for me, voice of the customer is not something that I delegate. I mean, there is other
Right.
people doing it. But if I'm going to go and, decide on an investment or ask the CEO of my corporation to make an investment, I want to see myself first. Okay. And it has to connect the dots. Now, I think that, what I learned in that process was also how do we think this may evolve in the future? And what are the part of the business where, this is a mature technology. There is no time to innovate on this. They're just going to go with this. So I'm going to pick the problems that I want to solve. And I need to be ready to have a solution for this problem that is going to surface 6 years from now. I need to be evolving my technical solutions, working with the partners, steering, the ecosystem to get a solution for that time. And you need to diversify. So it's not one bet. You need to find 5 or 6 bets to do it. But you could all be wrong if you don't get the right voice. So I mean, you are basically starting to aim into the future with the conversations you have with customers, and then you keep having those conversations for the next 6 years.
Right.
you keep seeing, you made a scenario, and it's very, was having this conversation with a friend the other day. It's very easy to say, yes, those decisions were right because now I am here. Yeah, we never discuss how lucky you got. Okay, so you may be successful today because you just got lucky. So the point is, at that time, with information you have, you make certain decisions and you keep reviewing them and you are ready to fail. I think the most difficult piece is knowing when to throw the towel and say, look, we went into this innovation business. It was going to be risky. And at some point, there may be, we may need to throw the towel in these three things,
Right.
while the other fourth, we double our bets.
That's a tough one. Knowing when enough is enough.
And you're going to miss it. You're going, and maybe, look, maybe you don't do a bet and another company plays the bet. And now you start second guessing, what did I miss? So, it's, hey, it's an interesting game.
It's an interesting game. A question regarding innovation that just came to mind, both on the technology side and then the people side. What sort of geographic differences do you see globally? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you see Europe different than North America or Latin America or Asia with respect to thinking about water innovation, both on the people side and the technology side. Anything come to mind?
I think that the problems you are trying to solve are different in many cases.
Hmm.
You go, look, you go to places in Argentina where you're just trying to deal with arsenic, which is something,
Right,
it shouldn't be a problem today. How can it be that, we have so many people suffering that, in certain areas of the country? Okay. So I think that as you see the maturity of the industry, there is a different level of maturity. The people care the same, you know. Uh, I so I think that's one aspect. I think that the other aspect that I found interesting, and it's just is a market structure, that I keep reflecting on it. When you look into a market like UK, you are dealing with maybe 7, 8 very large utilities.
right,
S- So the mindset for innovation, for approaching them, is much more of a very large key account thought process. You need to change one account. You
right.
come to the US and you have 50,000 different little players. And now, I mean, you still have very large utilities, but the approach to innovation is going to be different because you need to convince every single one of them. So, so how you drive innovation adoption, I believe, is different in those countries. The people itself, everybody is eager to drive continuous improvement in their process. I don't think you are going to. I mean, I'm sure you're going to find, but the majority of the people are trying to do the best they can with the tools they have and deliver to the purpose. So people is not the problem. Okay, now driving and working with them, the people is not the barrier. I don't actually. That's my optimistic piece. I don't
I-
think there is
it's-
a career for innovation. Well, I think that we just need to be patient.
we started framing our conversation as, having a theme of optimism and belief that, yeah, we can solve these challenges. And we have. We've been making progress. So, we shouldn't unnecessarily beat ourselves up. Just Daniel, real quick, like what's your take on the future of water in a couple of sentences? Like, where's this going, in your opinion?
Look, I think that people will soon get the perspective, hopefully, in some of the circles that we move, that we're making improvement. I see young people very motivated and connected with water, and that's where we should be putting our energy. I think that if we, instead of putting the time of complaining about the sector, we work with our younger generations and enable them to drive change. If those of us with some gray hair, we step back and let the younger generation to start driving, uh, the change that we have ahead and the improvement is very positive. It's going to be easy. That's a different question, but it's going
Yeah,
to be positive.
I love that as a vision of the future. Um, and Daniel, how do people follow up with you?
I'm always open to talk.
Oh, I know.
One of my personal passions is mentoring and coaching, and it's giving back. The water sector gave me a lot of opportunities, and I'm ready to give back. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I go to the conferences. I like to have heated conversations and opinionated conversations. I'm Latino American. My hands get into our conversations very fast. But you can reach out to LinkedIn and look. I have over the years, I've learned that I don't have the responses and answers for everything, and that the problems that we're dealing are big. So I'm always looking to learn and listen from other people. If they say, Daniel, I think we should be going in that direction, my commitment is to listen. Okay, I will have my opinion and I will share it, but my commitment is to listen.
It, thank you. And having experienced a lot of conversations with you, I know that to be true in terms of listening and having a point of view. So, Daniel, a million thanks. Great conversation as always. I look forward to seeing you
Looking forward to the
somewhere.
next conversation and the next heated discussion. Let's go and make some change, Will.
Sounds great. Very positive. Thanks.